We often see images like these, women empowered, connected, thriving, but behind these smiles lies a harder question. Does the law actually provide equal protection for women? Today I set out to answer that question. Today I sat down with a good friend and listened to how she felt about how women are affected by the law and shared my own knowledge. This is a strength we all have to do. Hello. Okay, will you say your name and your major? Okay.
Hi, my name is Taylor Moore, and I'm a marketing major here at the University of Arizona.
So, the overarching question of my video is, do you think the law provides equal protection for women? So, before I give you some information, I just want to hear a yes or a no or a maybe to that question.
No.
Okay, she was very straightforward. From what you know as a marketing major, what would you say, if you don't know the answer, that's okay. What would you say is a Supreme Court case that gave women equal protection?
So I'm not as smart as my dear friend Reagan here, and the marketing brain is the marketing brain. But after just chats that we have, I think Roe v. Wade is definitely something that I paid a lot of attention to, and I wouldn't say that at first it was like taking away our rights, and I just don't think that us as women, it's always been we are less than. And I know people try and pretend like we're not, but that was a prime example of taking away rights and then trying to frame it as something, well, we're protecting you or giving you something better, when it's like you're not actually asking what women want.
Well, I was hoping you would say Roe v. Wade. To give you some background, Roe v. Wade legalized abortion in the US. This was seen as a good thing for women. It was good. We got rights, supposedly. I did research on it this semester, and I learned that it really did not give women rights. It said, yes, we can federally regulate abortion and give you the privilege. However, they set up a trimester framework so that even though they gave some to women, they still took some away. Yeah. Big fat bummer! What else can I talk about? After research done this semester, I learned that Roe v. Wade did not give women what we think it did. Before this semester, I was confident that Roe v. Wade was a good thing for women and that it was a step in the right direction toward equality. And while it was a step, that step was very small. There was still guidelines that were set in place of trimesters. This was also framed as a privacy issue, which is a concept that's tied to private property, married households, and doctor patient relationships. So, when women are labeled as property, is it really getting equal protection for women? I don't think so. The second case we'll be looking at is Planned Parenthood v. Casey. It came after Roe v. Wade and was meant to reaffirm women's right to choose, but instead it introduced a new legal standard called the undue burden test. Under this standard, states could regulate abortion as long as the regulations did not create a substantial obstacle or an undue burden for women seeking the procedure. At first, this may sound protective, but in practice, the standard allowed many restrictions that waiting periods, parental consent requirements, and counseling roles were considered acceptable. Critically, Casey reinforced gender hierarchy. It framed abortion as a privilege of privacy rather than a matter of equal protection for women. In other words, the court treated women's bodily autonomy as secondary, something that only the law protects selectively. Kate Mann and Catherine McKnight might call this a clear example of how the law can enforce patriarchal norms by emphasizing privacy instead of equality. The court upheld male-centered societal expectations. Casey shows that even when the court claims to support rights, the law can subtly reinforce gender hierarchies, and that tension would only grow more visible 30 years later with Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization. Dobbs v. Jackson overturned Roe v. Wade. This case is marked as one of the most dramatic reversals in U.S. Supreme Court history, fundamentally reshaping reproductive rights. The court held that the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion and that authority returns to the states, that women's access to abortion depends on where they live, creating a massive geographical and socioeconomical disparity. From a gender equality perspective, Dobbs highlights the limits of laws protecting for women. Instead of treating reproductive autonomy as a matter of equal protection, the courts reduced it to a privilege contingent on state policy. In other words, women's bodily autonomy, something only a woman needs, is no longer guaranteed by the federal constitution. Scholars like Catherine McKinnon would see this as a clear example of dominance based inequality, where legal structures reinforce male centered control over women's body. Dobbs makes it clear that when the court prioritizes precedent or privacy over equality, gender hierarchies are not just preserved, they are strengthened. So while Roe v. Wade, which we learned earlier, did not give us full rights, it was still a step, and Dobbs completely sent us back 50 years. Another aspect of equal protection for women that I touch on is rape culture and how rape has been normalized. Would you say you feel comfortable or you know where to report rape if it were to happen to you on the U of A campus? And do you think that you would be listened to and protected in the way you should be?
No, that's my immediate answer is no. Um, I hope and pray that that never happens to anyone close to me or myself, but I think individuals push out certain resources and think it's obtainable, but when it actually happens, you don't know where to go and you don't know who to turn to, and you feel almost like you're going to be penalized if you report yourself as a victim. And I think if I was ever in that situation, I wouldn't know who to turn to other than like my best friends. And it's a bummer because we're not all as educated like you are to know where to turn. So my answer would be no, I don't think so.
So we watched a movie in class. It was called The Hunting Ground, and it was about these college students, and there was a serial rape. They reported it. Multiple women reported the same guy, and instead of helping these women, the university tried to protect itself and hide it and push it out. So does that really mean women have equal protection? No. For the law to provide equal protection for women, it must address that sexual violence overwhelmingly targets women. Kessel talks about rape culture in their article, how it normalizes violence. This normalization of violence is just another way of putting down women and not treating sexual violence as a pure form of violence. Ever heard of what a double bind is?
No.
This was kind of brought up by Catherine McKinnon, an author, and she talks about how gender equality is complicated because of this double bind standard, mainly being because if women and men were truly treated the same, then their specific experiences would be invalid, like pregnancy, sexual violence. If women were treated differently, the law still reinforces stereotypes and hierarchy, but if we were treated the same, there's still the same issue. So that's the theory of the double bind. So it's like, yes, we can try to get equal, but we don't want to be the same because we aren't.
I've never
It's
thought about it like
it's
that.
very, yeah, it's very mind-boggling. And then if you even bring in trans women, LGBTQ women, women of color, it gets. So how does it make you feel that basically we're kind of stuck in a system where we're unable to break through the patriarchy?
I think it's really unfortunate, and I think it just also goes to show we recently had an election, and the world is just, or America is just not ready for a female leader. I think the second we have a woman in power in leadership, I think it will really change the trajectory. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. And I feel like in this day and age, we're really here to like lift each other up now and show that as a united front, like women are here to lead, and women, we shouldn't be stuck in where we are, and like women are ready to take charge. And the second men realize that, the world will be a better place.
Thank you so much for talking with me today. I encourage you to share what we talked about with people you know within your sorority, and just spread the word. And yeah, any final comments or questions?
Women are awesome.
Period. Hard questions are uncomfortable, but they're how change happens. The law doesn't evolve unless people are willing to question it, challenge it, and talk honestly about what isn't working. Conversations like this are where that change begins.